Thank you so much. I saw that I'm speaking against a keynote that's discussing artificial intelligence, so I expected that it's going to be very hard to compete with that speech. But my name is Carmen Raal, and I work at the Estonia Briefing Centre as a digital transformation advisor. And some of you might know that Estonia has done a very good job when it comes to digitalizing public sector services. So I will try to explain you with a very limited amount of time the past, present, and the future of digitalization in Estonia. And I believe that it's very important to understand where we are coming from in order to understand where Estonia is right now. So in 1991, when we regained our independence back, Estonia did not look like it looks right now. So we inherited a lot of corruption issues, distrust, especially towards public sector services, lack of resources, and on top of all of this, Estonia still has a fourth very big problem, which is we are not a densely populated country. Just to give you a better understanding, our country is the same size as the Netherlands, but in the Netherlands, the population size is almost 18 million people, whereas for the same land area, Estonia has 1.3 million people. But that still means that we have to provide all the same services that the Netherlands is providing for their citizens, but we have less users per service, which makes providing public services in Estonia incredibly expensive. And fortunately enough, we realized that already in early 90s. And the other fortunate aspect was that Estonia had quite a lot of tech-savvy people here who recognized that there is potential when it comes to digitalization, and we can use it to leapfrog and catch up to our other European neighbors as well. So change first starts from the people. So the most important aspect from this timeline is digital-minded leadership. So our decision makers decided that this is something we're going to invest our money and time into. And the second important aspect here is that we've been very good when it comes to providing mass trainings to our citizens. By 2001, every school in Estonia had access to computer classes and computer education. And this very strong technology focus has allowed Estonia to have the highest percentage of IT graduates in Europe. And in early 2000s, additionally, what we did right was that we managed to build a strong infrastructure, which then allowed us to start building all of those different public sector services on top. So our electronic identity was implemented in 2002. Our data exchange platform called X-Road was implemented already in the year 2001. And I like to compare building up digital societies to building a house. Because if you don't build a strong foundation for your house, it doesn't matter what kind of mansion or castle you're going to have on top. Because the odds are that castle might collapse on you. So we've managed to build this very strong and resilient infrastructure, which we still use to this day. And this is why we've also started emphasizing reusability a lot. And this is why we've managed to start building or managed to build a quickly a digitalized society. So if we talk about e-business services, e-healthcare, social welfare services, the logic behind these services is always the same. And because that strong infrastructure was ready already in the year 2000, we could provide very significant services so early on. You're probably familiar with internet voting, because Estonia is quite famous for having internet voting since 2005. Until to this day, we are the only country in the world that allows internet voting on a national level. So when we recently had our EU Parliament elections, we had the choice. Do we want to go to the nearest voting station to us, or do we want to use our computers to cast our vote? And one service that is slightly less known, but a very good service to start from, was declaring taxes. So declaring taxes became the very first digital service for the wider public in Estonia, and nowadays it takes us less than 3 minutes to declare our personal taxes. And because we've made it so simple, we see a very odd phenomenon where the Tax and Customs Board is one of the most trusted public service providers in Estonia every year. So 91% of people feel that paying taxes is an important civic duty. And I can guarantee you, if that process would be complicated and it wouldn't be transparent, we wouldn't have a society where so many people are so fond of paying taxes. Because within the very first week, majority of Estonians have already paid their taxes, or declared their taxes, sorry. And where are we nowadays? So nowadays, 99.9% of public sector services in Estonia have been digitalized. There's only one service we cannot access online. I don't know if you've already heard what that service is. Anybody knows? So the last service Estonians cannot access online is getting a divorce. Everything else, including buying or selling real estate, getting married, everything is a digital service in Estonia. And let me now clarify some things. If we say that marriage is a digital service, it does not mean that Estonians have Skype or Zoom weddings. What it means is that we digitalize the paperwork that's required to do before people can get married. So we didn't understand why voting is online, but if I want to take my spouse's last name, then for that I have to go to a public office. So we digitalized the process, and now we're just left with divorce. And fortunately or unfortunately, next year, Estonia will be 100% digital, because we're also digitalizing divorce. But don't worry, we're not going to have 3-minute divorces. The rate of divorces is not going to skyrocket just because it is a digital service, but you can initiate it online in the near future. So if Estonia is 100% digital, that might mean that, well, the job is done. We can rest up, we have achieved our goals of having a fully digital public sector, but actually what we have to also witness is that there's never a rest for the wicked, right? What the problem for us is that public sector services, when it comes to the user centricity, they are not really keeping up with the same pace as with the private sector services. So private sector has very, very convenient and user-friendly services for one reason, because they don't have monopolies, right? We as public sector employees have monopolies on services, meaning we don't have competitors. So we really don't have to think about how transparent and user-friendly and easy they are to use, right? And we have also brought out 3 different digitalization eras. So the first digitalization era, which actually for us started in 1990s, is very simple, starting to digitalize data, creating interoperability, but it didn't really have huge effect on end users. The second digital transformation era already brought end-to-end digitalized services. We started focusing on user centricity more, but it wasn't really the sole focus. And nowadays, we like to say that for the past 4 years or so, Estonia has been working in our post-digital era. So all the services are digital, end-to-end digital, but the problem here is that we are talking about life events, right? In Estonia, we have a lot of different ministries providing a lot of different services. And what this means is that people have to know what ministry is providing them what kind of service. And this is a huge problem because I am a public sector employee, so I can admit it, that even for public sector employees, it's hard to understand the state bureaucracy. So why are we demanding other citizens who already have their jobs, their daily life, their family, to understand in detail how the entire state works? So we don't think it's right. And this is why we're currently trying to take the approach of government as a platform. We are building up live event-based services. Of course, the approach nowadays has to be mobile first. And live events don't always consist of public sector services, right? If you move, you also have to use private sector services. So our very big ambition is that we can put public and private sector services together to one platform, so citizens would always be aware what services are accessible from where. And just to give you a better idea, what we're talking about is going from reactive to proactive services. It's very easy for us to get public sector services because of our strong electronic identity. We can use it for public and private sector services. And because of our very extensive interoperability, it means that we almost never have to see an unfilled form in Estonia. We simply have to confirm that the data is correct, click submit, and the applications are already processed. But with reactiveness, the problem always is that I always have to know what are my opportunities and what are my rights. So currently, let me represent you the vision for Digital Estonia in very near future, which is personal government. You've seen a lot of these iceberg visualizations where you can only see the tip of the iceberg and nothing else. So we have built a personal government tree. So the roots are everything that we see, your data, your opportunities, your obligations, but there's a lot happening underneath, right? So we need skilled public sector employees, we need a good legal environment to support the digital services, we need platforms, we need registries and so on. And our idea now here is that this is going to be only the task of the state. We are making sure that our people don't have to understand the entire system of the tree roots. And where this has gotten us is that we actually already have a couple of live events built up. So for example, people who have lost somebody that's close to them. They don't really have to deal with the state bureaucracy anymore because we've built a live event around this. Additionally, we're finalizing building up having a baby life event. So one of the very famous proactive services in Estonia is that if a child is born, the hospital already does the registration, which means that we somewhere in the state know that there is a baby in Estonia that's eligible to get, or actually parents that are eligible to get parental benefits because they became parents. So in Estonia, parents don't have to start proving again that they became parents. They will get a message congratulating them and simply asking them to verify the bank account where they want to get that money. So this will be the logic behind all the different services in Estonia. And additionally, people don't really use laptops anymore. We don't even feel the need to have a laptop at home, because smartphones are simply so capable. And we've been a successful digital society because we don't demand our users to come to us, but rather we want to go to them. So very soon, our government application will be launched. And this is the first idea how the full application should look like. Although the app will be released this autumn, creating everything that you will see still will take a couple of years to do. So first, we will have all our documents, all our certificates accessible from this one place. So we don't have to carry any documents with us anymore. And if we have, for example, children, then you can access their documents from this application as well. And like I mentioned, live events don't only consist of public or private sector services. So this is why we are building this government as a platform service where we combine the public and private sector services. This example here demonstrates finding a kindergarten to your child. You can choose the proximity, how close you want the kindergarten to be. You can choose between public and private sector kindergartens and make the best choice for your child. But something that's more simpler is when we move. When we move, in Estonia, you have to change your home address at the population register, but that's not only it. We also have to now get a new energy agreement. We have to get a new Wi-Fi agreement, and so on and so on, and these are all private sector services. And the problem with life events is that oftentimes we don't know what we don't know. So this platform service approach allows us to make sure that, well, if there is anything I should do or I can get, I will at least be notified that I'm eligible to get these services. Additionally, it's stopped working.
Prosím, dá sa urobiť niečo so zariadením, aby to fungovalo ďalej? Asi áno, OK.
Okay,
Here we go.
Thank you. So lastly, in order to have a high innovation or a high and very innovative society, right, we need to have high trust society. And that is something that most democratic countries are nowadays struggling with. People are losing trust in the public sector and people are losing trust in their government. But that tends to correlate with innovation when it comes to public sector services. And in order to maintain this trust, we have taken a very, very clear approach that every citizen is the owner of their personal data. And what that means is that if I am the owner of my personal data, then first of all, I have to have an overview of how my personal data is handled. Additionally, I should be the one saying who can access my personal data. So here on the slides, you can already see our data tracker and our consent management services, which already do exist, just not in the form of an application yet. They're all accessible from our state portal called eesti.ee. And through our data tracker, we can see going 6 months back with all the important registries who has been looking at our personal data. If we do see something suspicious, then we can already know that, okay, I have to turn to the Data Protection Authority, and then the Data Protection Authority is obligated to investigate our concerns. And the consent management platform, which we have been building up for the last couple of years, essentially allows me to decide with who I'm sharing my personal data. And that applies to public and private sector services. If we're moving towards life event-based approaches, then life events are not mandatory. It's our right to access these convenient services. And with that, we also have to be the ones giving the right to access our personal data. Additionally, it's easier if we get to share our publicly collected data with the private sector. So if you want to apply for a home loan, you have to provide your bank with your tax declaration information normally. So the banks can give you the proposals. So through this consent management service, we don't have to go and fill out forms with all the different banks. We can just give them consent to access our tax declaration information going back a year, based off of what they can give us the proposals, and we can just choose the bank we want to go with and take the access right away from all the other users. So to conclude all of this, we in Estonia like to say that democracy has a digital spirit. Oftentimes, digitalization and social media platforms more so are associated with the rise of populism or threat to democracy and false news spreading and so on. And we think that, well, actually, we should also have a digital approach to tackle all of these threats. And thanks to our secure electronic identity, Estonians have been using a citizens initiative portal for past couple of years, which allows us to create initiatives online and sign for the initiatives that we agree with. And for example, when it comes to national level initiatives, the initiative has to get just 1,000 signatures for this to go to the parliament, and so parliament would have to start discussing the initiative as well. People like to debate online. People don't want to go to streets anymore. They are discussing on X, they are using Facebook to discuss. But that is a problem because with Facebook, we don't know, are these actual Estonians or Slovakians, right, discussing and liking the texts? Are they even real people, right? Because we have a huge issue of bots. Additionally, we are all in our small echo chambers. We only see what we want to see. So with the Citizen Initiative portal, we can make sure that these are all true Estonians writing the initiatives. And because of our very secure electronic signature, which is legally on the same level as our handwritten signature, we can also make sure that, that these are legitimate people signing the document. So no need to go from door to door, collect signatures, and no need for public sector employees to later verify the accuracy and the legitimacy of these signatures. Additionally, we've talked about the data tracker, right? We have full control over who is looking at our data, more and more control over who is even accessing our data. And I mentioned that in the 90s, we used to deal with a lot of corruption. Nowadays, Estonia is viewed to be one of the most transparent and least corrupt countries in the world. Even if you look at different corruption indexes, we tend to do a very good job. Recently, Transparency International released a corruption perceptions index. And from 180 countries, Estonia there holds the 12th place. So we're not perfect. We still have problems we have to deal with. But I can guarantee you that it's easier to tackle corruption issues when you have digital tools rather than monitoring corruption on paper. So it's simply easier to be corrupt with analog systems than it is with digital systems. And that finalizes my presentation around digital state of Estonia. I hope you have some questions for me as well.
Of course, Carmen. Thank you very much for your presentation. Anybody can ask you? Let me ask you shortly just one question. What about the inclusion of people who don't have digital skills?
Yeah. So this is a very important question. And one thing I have to emphasize is if you have a very digitalized society, that does not mean that people who cannot use digital tools are somehow left behind. So in Estonia, we still have public offices where us as citizens, we can access all the possible services just talking to civil servants. But the exception here is that we don't have a separate analog and a digital state. So even if I go to an office, the only extra step I have to do is that I have to go there physically. So I don't have to bring any forms with me. I don't have to fill out any forms. All this is done by the digital society. So primarily the X-Road, right, which allows us to have a very distributed way of storing data, yet this interoperability lets us bring all the data together to one place. Additionally, one of the most used public sector services in Estonia is e-prescriptions. And 99.9% of prescriptions in Estonia are digital. So what this means is that we don't have to go to our doctors to get the papers and then go to the pharmacy to get our prescriptions. We just go to the pharmacy, show them our identity card, and the pharmacist can see all the medicine we can get. This is actually a digital service that does not require any digital skills and is very widely used by the elderly who are seen to be more vulnerable when it comes to digitalization. And lastly, if most people use services online. So for example, 98% of taxes are declared online in Estonia. If most people do it online, then it means that for those 2% who for some reason can't do it online, they can go to the tax declaration office and they don't have to wait in huge queues to access the service. It means that our public employees can actually focus on people who truly need that focus. So, and last but not least, every small Estonian town also has computers. our libraries, or more so our librarians, are also seen to be as digital superheroes. Because first of all, every library has publicly usable computers, and librarians have gone through the training which allows them to assist people with simple digital activities. So if I feel like I'm bold and I want to declare my taxes for the first time ever, then for this I don't have to go to the tax office, but I can go to the nearest library and I have a friendly face helping me.
Thank you very much. I wish you all the best. Carmen Raal, Estonia Briefing Centre.